And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC basketball podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, we are going to be talking about the finals matchup, which is most likely going to be the Celtics and the Mavs going into the finals. Now, I say this is going to be the finals matchup because there has not been a single team in the history of the NBA that has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit. That has never happened throughout any playoff series in the entire history of basketball. Never. So, with that in mind, I am fate is going to be against these two teams. Fate is going to be against the Pacers, and it's also going to be against the Timberwolves. These two teams are basically done, as history has shown. Now, if I'm wrong later on, then you can just chalk that up to the list of Nelson's terrible takes, because I've had a lot of them in this postseason. So you can just add that onto the list. And honestly, it would make the series a lot more entertaining than what it has been so far. Granted, the Celtics series, it's been a lot more entertaining than a lot of people give it credit for. There's a running joke going on around the media where they're all saying who's watching the Celtics and Pacers series? It's really boring, yada yada yada. But in reality, it's a very competitive series. The games have all been really close, and they've all been decided by one play or another. And a Jaylen Brown game-tying three-pointer, a Jason Tatum game-leading three-pointer in Game 1, and then a very close game, well, not a really close game, honestly. It was a blowout win for the Celtics in Game 2. And then, but another really close game in Indiana that came down to a Drew Holiday steal. That's a very fun series to watch. And a lot of people were talking about how the Timberwolves series was going to be a lot better to watch, but that hasn't been the case either. The duel between Anthony Edwards and Kyrie has not even been close. Anthony Edwards said he was going to clamp Kyrie. That hasn't happened whatsoever in the postseason. That has not happened. Kyrie dropped 33 points. Is that clamps? That's not clamps. He also hasn't really played that well throughout the entirety of the series. Neither has Cat. And if anything, the Mavs series is a little bit more boring than the Celtics series. But aside from that, not to mention Rudy Gobert playing the worst center in the NBA. I kid you not. The fact that his pick and roll defense is this bad is astonishing to me, because it's how do you go from somewhat slowing down Jokic to not being able to stop a pick and roll? It doesn't make sense. So, as history has shown, it seems like the team that is up 3-0 is going to be the team that ends up going to win the series later in the end. Now, this would mean that the Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks are going to match up against each other in the finals. And this final series, I believe it can feed families for generations. This final series would be one of the craziest series ever, simply because of Kyrie's connection with the Boston Celtics. Now, a little bit of history with Kyrie and the Celtics. So Kyrie, when he was really, really young and incredibly naive and incredibly crazy, just jokes, by the way. Kyrie was on the Cavs with LeBron, and someone's calling me. I don't know why. He was on the Cavs with LeBron in 2017. They ended up losing to the Golden State Warriors. After that year, Kyrie Irving requests a trade from the Cavs, and that shocked absolutely everyone. I couldn't believe that Kyrie would want to request a trade to leave LeBron after they made the finals. And I figured you'd want to run it back, because you're just going to the finals every single year. Run it back until you win. But he ended up deciding to break that cycle, and the team that traded for him surprised me even more, with the Boston Celtics. The Celtics, they came off of they lost to the Cavs in the playoffs, and because they didn't have Isaiah Thomas, the king of the fourth quarter at the time. But they decided to trade Isaiah Thomas for Kyrie Irving. Now, Isaiah Thomas came off of the season averaging 28 points. He was dropping 30 points in the postseason, 30 plus points in the postseason, and they decided to trade him. And I genuinely did not, I was shocked at that trade. I did not expect the Celtics to really give up on Isaiah Thomas that easily for Kyrie. And his time on the Celtics was disappointing and full of criticism from everyone. So, for starters, Kyrie was injured throughout most of the postseason, but the Celtics team was doing really good without him. Then when he was playing in the postseason, the second time around, the second year where he wasn't injured, they actually did worse in the postseason and only made it to the second round as opposed to making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. And that sort of disrupted Kyrie's entire mojo because he wanted to go to the Celtics and he wanted to be that guy on the Celtics. But it seemed like the team was playing better and doing better without him. And so once he realized that and he decided to request a trade and eventually decided to go to the Brooklyn Nets. This soured a lot of people's opinions, like a lot of Boston fans' opinions on Kyrie Irving because they felt wronged by him. And I don't blame him. I don't blame any of those fans because Kyrie said literally before the offseason that he decides to sign with Brooklyn, I plan on re-signing with the Boston Celtics. He chooses not to re-sign and ends up going to Brooklyn. And then the Celtics fans, they all just despise him later on, and which makes total sense. Kyrie then, when he's on the Brooklyn Nets with his big three with Kevin Durant and James Harden, they beat the Celtics in 5 games, which thus insinuates the hate coming in from the fans. They just despise Kyrie for this decision. And Kyrie, when he was in that playoff series, I believe it was Game 3, he stepped on the Celtics logo. I believe, I don't remember exactly what game it was, but I remember he stepped on the Celtics logo. And ever since, it might have been game 4 now that I think about it. And ever since he stepped on that logo, bad luck has come from him. And they matched up against the Celtics again after they lost James Harden in a trade where they got Ben Simmons, and they ended up getting swept by the Boston Celtics. And that was sort of like the Celtics revenge tour on Kyrie Irving. That was when they took out their revenge. And now they rematch on completely different teams, but with the same exact young team that was outperforming without Kyrie Irving on the squad. In fact, Kyrie actually had a problem with that squad and how young they were, and so much so that he called LeBron apologizing for how immature he was and realizing how being young and immature could be detrimental to a team. And so now that he's a little bit more mature and playing really well on the Dallas Mavericks, he's going to match up against his former team in the finals. And this series, again, with all of the things that I just mentioned and all of the little storylines, because the Celtics fans, they aren't going to forget what Kyrie did to them. They are not going to forget it one bit. And that series, it's going to feed families. I guarantee you, all the Celtics fans, they're all going to be yelling at Kyrie. Every second that he gets the ball, they're just going to boo him. Similar to how in Oklahoma, every single time Kevin Durant got the ball, he got booed. And it's going to be a similar story that way. Now, who's going to win in that playoff series? That's still up for debate because the Celtics have yet to play a completely healthy team. All of their playoff series wins have come against injured teams and teams that just, haven't really they aren't at their full potential. That's what I wanted to say. But the Mavericks, on the other hand, they do have a really good roster, and they have competed against completely healthy teams. But this is a big problem. The defense on the Celtics is not something that should be trifled with. Drew Holiday and Derek White are phenomenal defenders. They made the All-NBA second team, and that's not counting Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who are also phenomenal defenders. And those two defenders, they're most likely going to be guarding Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. And having those two defenders on you, harassing you 24/7, it's going to take a toll on your stamina. And it's really like what makes this team so dangerous, like the Celtics, is how they can have those two defenders guarding you and still like just focus on guarding you. Like they don't even have to do anything offensively because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown could provide offensively along with Al Horford and the potential, rehabilitation of Kristaps to be able to play in the series. So the only thing that that Drew Holiday and Derek White would really have to worry about is guarding Kyrie and Luka. And they only have to focus on that. They don't really need to focus on much offensively, because at least if I were to assign them that role. And it's concerning for the Mavs, because it's like you're going up against elite perimeter defenders. And that's something that they didn't really have to go up against in the postseason so far. I mean, they had to face the Clippers, I'll give them that, but they didn't have Kawhi in that series, so they were lacking in a perimeter defender. Then they had to play against OKC. Lou Dort was only one good perimeter defender for the Thunder, and that comes immediately to mind. And now on the Timberwolves, granted they have a very solid defensive team, Anthony Edwards, however, has proven to be ineffective when guarding Kyrie Irving or any of those two guys. Now, Drew and Derek White, on the other hand, they're all NBA defensive players. And it's totally different going up against all defensive players as opposed to, good defenders. Completely different scale, completely different level. So that's mainly like the concern that I have for the Mavericks and their chances of winning, because it's all going to be determined by how well Kyrie and Luka can play against all NBA defenses. And as for the Celtics, really it comes down to being consistent enough on offense to be able to match the Mavericks, while at the same time being able to stop those two players. Like while I do give a lot of credit to Drew Holiday and Derek White for their defense, I also give a lot of credit to Luka and Kyrie for their offense, because it's very difficult to stop those two with the degree of difficult shots that they make. It's like they could have an off game or they can have a good game. It really, we have no idea. But that's all that I have for this fifth segment, and that is going to be the end of the show. So thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is GSMCPodcast.net. It really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. That is all I have for you all today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't